All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 6th, just after the 4th of July holiday, Village Council meeting of 2021. And Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
All right, Hausch.
I'm here.
McQueen.
Here.
Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Present.
Curlis. Here. Also present is Village Manager Josue Salmeron. Finance Director Matt Dillon. Solicitor Brianne Parcels. Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger. Public Works Director Johnny Burns. And Chief Carlson.
All right, so first I believe we have a swearing in. So I'll invite the mayor and the mayor's clerk to come up to the front.
Just a word before we start. I wanted to give the public the face of the clerk who is going to be front and center for the mayor's court and the mayor's office. So although this swearing in is a bit of a formality, it's important that I think we do it in front of the camera and in front of council so that we can welcome our new clerk. This is Mackenzie Baird. Mackenzie has been on the job for about 2 months now, learning from Elise, who's of course down in the utilities office. So we've had a bit of a shifting of offices here, and we will swear her in now in front of council. Are you ready? Would you raise your right hand, please? Repeat after me. I solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution and obey the laws of the United States and the state of Ohio, and that I will in all respects observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of clerk of court. Thank you very much. You're official.
All right, welcome, Mackenzie. All right, thank you, Mayor. Yes, welcome. All right, next up we have announcements, and I wanted to begin by recognizing a few amazing village team members that are getting ready to transition. One of those is here with us tonight, our community access station manager, Sean Devine, who's been amazing. We've also got our actually amazing team member who's supported in a lot of areas, Raven Behrens, who is also moving on to Vermont, very jealous. And thirdly, a longtime member of the police team, Sergeant Naomi Watson, who is going to be doing some great work. And I wanted to hand it over to Josue to add a few other thoughts.
Thank you, Brian. It's bittersweet to see all these wonderful folks transition out. Each one of them have contributed in so many ways to the way that we do our business. We'll start with Sean. You know, look how far we've come with our technology. Yeah, he's troubleshooting stuff. So Sean's really instrumental in helping us transition to a virtual platform as we dealt with that pandemic. You know, we were one of the first communities to jump on the virtual meetings, and we were able to do so very successfully with no challenges. I think we even beat the governor at a lot of things doing virtually. So we couldn't have done this work without Sean. Raven's been amazing in her ability to help us modernize the village from our integration of the iWork system, which is a ticketing system, the GISing system, and just a lot of online support, including SharePoint. So we're going to miss Raven, but I wish her all the best in her ventures to become a mountaineer. And finally, Naomi, who's been with us for over 14 years. She's just done an incredible job in helping us provide excellent service to our residents. So I think what's made her successful is her passion to help people. And as she transitions to healthcare industry, she's going to take that passion and have an impact where she's going. So I wish them all the best, and thank you for acknowledging them.
Yep, thank you. And did you have a few other?
We have a few announcements or other things I would like to thank. We had great events recently. 4th of July Amazing event. A lot of folks turn out. We couldn't do this with having such a wonderful team in place. That's our police department, the fire department, the Odd Fellows. Great collaboration overall. So really good. Also for the Pride Parade. It's an amazing event. We had thousands of people here with 0 incidents. So just an outstanding event. Couldn't do it without the fire department and the police department and our public works teams. So we want to thank them and for all their support on this.
Yeah, and just to add to that, what I was really impressed with is the organizing committee for YS Pride, and this was the 10th year, was so great about coordinating with the village and with the township, and just really pulled off, it's such a great experience. And specifically, I want to thank those 6 members of that committee, which are Amy Walmsley, as well as Philip O'Rourke, which is in room A, he's in rooms A and B. We also had Bob Partita, Christine Monroe Beard, Heather Taylor Rigsby, and Chastity Crawford. So really great group, so meaningful for our village. And in terms of 4th of July, again, the coordination was so great. I love seeing our safety captains for the parade. And I want to also say I did the midnight swim for the first time and learned that it's not really an adult thing. So anyway, yeah, I spent 10 fun minutes with a bunch of teenagers in the pool, and I'm sure they were amused. So really great. Thanks everyone. Thanks to the village team. Thanks to the township, and of course the Odd Fellas. Any other announcements? I want to talk about something that Lisa called me about, and it kind of has to do with us talking too much. I'll just be blunt. And our last meeting was a little bit over 3.5 hours, which reminded me of when Marianne and I first joined council. The average council meeting was 3.5 to 4 hours. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of paring that down to 2.5 hours. I know Lisa is thinking even 2 hours, but I do want to say that, there is a balance because we do want to have rich discussions. We do want to allow for maximum citizen participation. And so, we need to think about that, but I also want everyone to be mindful, to be prepared, to be focused, and maybe to try to stick to the agenda. And so, Lisa, maybe I thought you could share the idea you had that we might pilot at the next meeting.
Sure. I did have an idea. And the last meeting I was absent. And so I had the opportunity to watch the meeting on the replay. And it's different when you're watching it on the replay than when you're live on the podium. And as I watched it, I thought about some of the interactions that we've had around citizen comments and the way that we as a council have tried to do some time management in terms of the duration of citizen comments. And I started to think, well, hey, if we're going to have hold people to their agenda time on citizen comments, then we should also be held to our agenda time for agenda items. And so if we have 10 minutes, then you hold it to 10 minutes. If you can't get it done in 10 minutes, then it rolls to the next meeting. I mean, as a business person, that's how you operate. Now, what I don't want to do, though, is diminish citizen comments. And so this is where it gets a little complicated, because if we want to have citizen comments and if it's a 10-minute agenda item, we would always want to allow a certain amount of time at the end of that 10 minutes for citizen comments. So it's a little bit of a work in progress. But basically, what I'm trying to think about, is there a way for us to enforce a little bit more diligence around our planned agenda, which a lot of time, Marianne and Brian as president and vice president spend a lot of time doing agenda planning with Judy and Josue, right? So how can we hold to our agenda better? How can we limit our comments? And maybe I'm not even doing a good job doing that right now. And how do we still allow enough time for citizen comments? So that's what I was trying to think about as I watched this 3.5 hour meeting.
And I think an important thing that you shared, Lisa, is also the impact it has on being a basically almost volunteer elected official or public official, and that can lead to folks that might want to participate in leadership not being able to do so. So
Right. We want, I mean, this is nothing against the people who are my colleagues who are going to run again, but we want more people to run for council. We want a broader field of council members for our community to choose from. We want more diversity, want more age diversity. And I know from experience, it's very, very difficult because of the time commitment. So we need to have sort of what I think of as like managerial controls to try to make it more doable for more people to say, I can do this, I can participate, I have the time, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Last two quick things. No meeting the first week of August. This is where we allow our clerk of council and others to take a real vacation. So, and I think Judy's going to do that. Now, thanks to Lori Asklin, former council member, who brought that up and helped make that happen. And then finally, between our last meeting and this meeting, this guy over here celebrated his second anniversary with the village.
Yes.
And so want to say I'm really glad you're here. Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move into consent agenda. All right. And that's the minutes from the last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next up is review of the agenda. Anything we need to modify, add, or delete? Are we going to talk about the home ink request?
Yes, let's have that. What would it be under new business?
Be new business.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. All right, just a heads up for people that may be here for these reasons. We are going to talk about motorcycle noise and some of the ideas that were proposed during the manager's report. And I also want to emphasize that the Citizen Review Board or Community Review Board, whatever we ultimately decide, will be an agenda topic at our next meeting. I want to do our best to not have a 3.5-hour meeting tonight. And that needs some time to talk about. So with that, petitions and communications.
Yes. So we had a appreciation from the County Health Department for the various partners that helped with locations for people to get vaccinated for COVID-19. I wanted to thank everyone. Home Inc. has submitted a funding request that we just put on our agenda for old business for a grant for repair, home repair in the village. And also Home Inc. submitted an invitation for staff, village staff, and council members to tour Glen Cottages. And I think that it might be good to set up a couple times, and that might be the most effective way to do that, actually. Mm-hmm. Then we had some letters with concerns about the Ober development, which is being planned at the south end of town. Joseph Amend asked, well, he had various concerns about traffic. Beth Crandall requested a traffic study. David Mader also requested a traffic study. Patrick and Carla Lake requested a traffic study and a utility capacity study. And I believe that Josue will probably mention both of those when we get to that. 365 had a letter of support for the Citizen Review Board. Harvey Page had questions about his calculations for his solar panels and asked that the village manager address that. Jerry Papania had submitted something last time. He has a concern about the village shifting its building inspections from the county to internal. Caroline Qualls had a communication concerning trash, especially on Dayton Street in downtown, indicating that she picks it up a lot and that the trash cans get overfilled and thinks that we need more and the trash needs to be picked up further. And Laura Curlis submitted a memo from her discussion with Al Kuzma at the Greene County Building Department.
Which came just today, so it's not in the packet.
So
Okay.
neither were some of that.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on to legislation then. And first up we have, all right, silence those phones. That's all right.
Jean wants to call into the meeting.
Okay. So this is emergency reading of ordinance 2021-13. And Judy, we can do that by title only.
This is authorizing a request to the Ohio Board of Building Standards to certify the Village of Yellow Springs to exercise residential enforcement authority and perform inspections in accordance with the Ohio Basic Building Code and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. Josue?
Thank you, Brian. I have a presentation. I could go through the same presentation we've done in the past. The intent of the last legislation that was introduced as emergency legislation was so that it would be in effect immediately. Due to technical issues with how the voting for an emergency legislation must happen, it's coming back to you for a second reading. And that is that it requires a supermajority, 4 votes, to become enacted as emergency legislation. So because it received a 3-1 vote, it needs to come back for a second reading. So that's why it's before you tonight. I want to be respectful of your time and the attention you give into this issue. So I have a presentation, the same presentation you heard before, or I can just take questions.
Yeah, what I would suggest is high points about why we're doing this, and then let's open it up for questions and comments.
Okay, excellent. So I'll high level review. The village always intended to have a building department. It had a full-fledged building department with its own plan review and inspections in the 70s. Our current codified ordinances, it speaks to that intent, and it designates building official. Under the current codified ordinances, it designates me, the village manager, as the building official. Well, we can agree that I'm probably not the best person to serve in that role. And it's also out of line, not in compliance with the state requirements for what is a certified building official. So what the village council has passed previously in establishing a building department specifically is to address that compliance issue with the law. So the first legislation that passed a couple weeks ago, probably over a month now, to establish a building department was necessary. These 2 legislations before you, the certifying the village for residential and commercial building department code, are necessary in the next step to pursue certification. Now, there were, I strongly believe, and I shared this opinion previously, that the village should have had a certified building department, even if we were not doing those services, because the law allows us, by our home rule powers, to have our own building department and contract out the services. So in an ideal situation, we should have had a certified building department and have a leveled contractual relationship with whoever we decided to contract that service for. In this case, Greene County. Had we had a certified building department, it's a level relationship where we have a voice at the table and we can ask for certain things like basic customer service and proper responses to applications, which currently are things that we are not getting. Updates from the last meeting that we had, I did meet with the downtown businesses a week ago, and I was happily surprised that the majority of those business owners are in support of us having a building department. And it was heartbreaking to hear some of the challenges that our small business owners are having in the village just to get basic permits. They're being put through a very burdensome process with little guidance and little customer support. So that's the high level view. I talked about, can we do this? What's the value? Sure, I've got the financials up there, and these numbers are in line with what Laura Curlis, who I think she devoted a lot of time to have her questions answered, and she's validated these numbers through her own independent research. So up on the screen is the fees collected. So our busiest year was actually 2014, followed by 2018. And the average seems to be around 30,000 in fees that are collected from the permits in the village. Clearly not enough for us to have our own staffing. We wouldn't hire our own building official. We won't hire our plan reviewer, our own inspector, because there isn't enough money through the permit fees to do that. We didn't intend from when we embarked in this process, it was never our intention to fully staff our department. It was to find a better service, a better contracted services. So we engaged several providers in the space, other municipalities, government entities, and private contractors who provide this type of service in the region, in the state, and across the country. So we have been very happy with the level of engagement we've seen from our potential partners in how modernized other departments and service providers are in the space. I think Curlis's memo speaks to attempts that the Greene County Department is embarking on, such as embracing or implementing an online submission process for commercial and in the future residential permits. I'm happy to see that, but it's also sad that it's 2021 and folks are just I love the beat. It's also sad that it's 2021 and we're just modernizing building departments in Greene County. We had over a year of a pandemic where it was crucial to have online services because buildings had shut down. We were avoiding in-person contact. So nonetheless, I'm happy to see that Al and his team are thinking innovatively and embarking on these new solutions. But I think we ourselves as a community must go further in our pursuit of economic development in the village. I think the paper and burdensome process that currently in place is hurting our economic development opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council members?
Josue, can you guarantee that the fees will cover the costs of having our own department?
I've engaged with 2 providers who guaranteed that the fees would allow not only to cover their costs, but provide us revenue, a little amount of revenue for our own administrative expense.
So Al Kuzma said 2019 was sort of the banner year of building, and we only brought in $37,731 in permit fees. You know, it just doesn't seem like a lot to me to run our own building department, especially with a big development coming online.
We're not going to have our own staffing for it.
No, I understand.
Yes. So the outsourcing of services with those providers we've spoken to, there isn't a sunk cost or fixed cost to hire somebody. We will be paying for the service that we will utilize from the vendors. So they will take a portion of the fee that is collected to cover the cost of providing the service. So for $37,000, so short to say is even if it's $10,000 or whatever the small amount is, they can take us on because they have a streamlined process and staff who already have that capacity.
But I mean, will we have to raise the fees to cover our costs? I guess that's the bottom line.
I think on the fee, I've looked at the fee schedule, both for the county and Clark County. Also looked at Madison County fee schedule and the state's guidelines on it. And Greene County, and I also had this conversation with Brandon Huddleston, who's the county administrator. The fees are lower than the market area, Montgomery County and Clark County. So there's a pricing issue with the permit fees already, and a poor service to go with it.
Well, as far as poor service goes, I mean, Al said right now today, commercial plans can be submitted online and permits gotten. It's the residential that are coming online soon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I feel that staff has asked for this. They feel that they need it. I have confidence in the staff if they feel like they can do it. I mean, we're not going to do it. And I also think that if the fees need to be raised a bit, that's fine. People, I think, it's more critical to have the turnaround done timely than to raise the modest fees a little bit. So I support this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just like to
Appreciate
make
it.
one more comment. I asked Al, we're already on contract with them. If we go off contract and we want to go back, let's say it's not working out in 2 or 3 years, there's no guarantee that they'll take us back. As a matter of fact, the county commissioners have to approve that.
I read your memo and I reviewed the legal requirements, and that may be true. What I would say to that is, I think in your own memo, Al has acknowledged that Fairborn has their own building department, and Fairborn does it well, and they're another municipality in the county. So all that to say is that we have options.
They're much bigger than we are. We keep coming up with these proposals, and we are 3,500 people.
But I think Josue means that we can contract with Fairborn. I mean, we do have precedent, which you're aware of, Laura, which is that we left regional planning, right? And then we were doing it in-house, and then we went back. I guess I have to believe that if they're making all these improvements, then they're going to want customers. So, and it sounds like we should still be a customer if the process improves.
We won't be a customer if we do this of Greene County.
Laura, Lisa?
I have 2 questions and they're unrelated, so I'd like to ask them separately. But the second one is about budget implications. But the first one is, when we think about, I feel that the village of Yellow Springs is at a really positive tipping point. I feel like we have a tremendous opportunity right now to reinvent the village, and that this might be part of it in a good way. And I wonder, though, I've thought a lot about local control, even in light of how small we are. So what impact would voting yes on this have on our control of future large development, such as the possible Ober development? Why would yes or no vote on this make a difference for that?
Mm-hmm. I'll go back to the element of control and being innovative. There are things that, from an innovation perspective, that the county struggles with, particularly with renovation of historical properties. We got a couple projects, I think one that you will hear about next week at Planning Commission, which is the old schoolhouse. I think complex development projects like that one, where it tries to honor the architecture and history of the building while also meeting code and putting top-notch technology, I think those, from an innovative perspective, will be a challenge for the county. To the other piece of control, I would like a process where the layperson, folks who don't have a law degree from some school and are able to interpret the law or guide it through the code and be able to have a good experience to get what they need done. And that's what the providers that we discussed have emphasized, is that they want to make building permit process accessible to all citizens, not just those who have top-notch architects and lawyers to walk through the permitting process. I've heard numerous stories from a local business, and Dino is here, and he had an experience with it that could have been detrimental to his business. Heard from other smaller entrepreneurs who were looking to do something new in their space, and they couldn't. So from a control perspective, being able to ensure that our building official can guide people through the process and provide up-to-date information on the process and give them some guidance would help our local businesses thrive and succeed in Yellow Springs, which currently I don't think that's there. So I think I answered your question about innovation and control.
You did. So my second question, when I ran for council, fiscal responsibility of the village was was and continues to be important to me, particularly as we face revenue decreases because of COVID and increased great opportunities brought by other council members and myself that do have budget implications. And I regret that I was not able to attend the last meeting, so I was not able to ask this question at that time. So I apologize that I'm lagging a little bit. But every time I hear this discussed, I hear that there's both direct and indirect costs related to this. There's direct, and I mean, I have a lot of experience in outsourcing, and I see the value. So there's direct costs through outsourcing of these providers that you mentioned. There's also indirect cost of adding workload to the village team, right? And what I haven't seen yet, like if I had my way tonight, I would say I'm in favor of this and I'm not ready to vote. And again, I'm sorry I wasn't at the last meeting, but I still haven't seen the rate sheet for these potential providers that we discussed and the fees collected versus the actual costs that we might face. And I'm okay if we say, well, maybe at first we see that there's a tremendous advantage of having this, but it's going to cost us some money. We're not going to be able to recoup the actual costs. I would like to just see that and just face that rather than saying it's going to be, I just don't believe it's revenue neutral. And for me, I understand that, but I want to look at it, right, before I vote. So if I had my way, I would, before I voted, had a better understanding of the cost for service, just to get it out there for the community, understanding the benefits that your presentation highlights.
Yes.
Before you respond, because this is kind of the one comment or question that I had that I think is related. Can you talk about within this, it appears to me that we are not, as a village staff, hands off currently, right? And it sounds like not only is there already involvement, time spent, but there's now extra time spent because of all the complaints and all the problems. So anyway, I guess just factor that in to what Lisa's talking about.
Yes, thank you, Brian, for that reminder. There is currently a burden on staff handling all the issues that are happening at the county. In fact, Johnny's online, and we had a situation where Johnny actually had to jump in and fix wiring for a site to make sure it passed inspection and passed the permitting process. There's numerous examples of how we have to be involved to push things through the county. So there's already a burden on us because of the challenges that are existing at Greene County. So our expectation, and Denise has raised this in the past, is that we think it's going to be easier on us if we have better control on this by having a building department, a better working relationship with our building official. In terms of your budget question, fiscal responsibility and sustainability is key to what we want to do. There's several ways to answer this piece. One is, from a fiscal financial perspective, it's not going to cost us more in hard dollars, or we're going to have an additional expense. And the reason for it is that the partners that we have engaged, they acknowledge that there's an administrative cost that is hard to measure. And so any fees that they will get, we will remit less than 100% of the fees to them. So one example will be a 90-10 fee sharing model, where the provider gets 90% of the fee to do all the service, and we retain 10% of the fee for administrative expenses that might come up, things that we can tangibly start a timer on to say that's how much time we're spending on. There's also an opportunity, this fiscal responsibility framework that you raised, Lisa, about evaluating what is the right cost of delivering service. Because the other side of this coin is the longer delays that we have in the permitting process, it's costly for our community. It means it takes longer to get the jobs up and running and generating property tax and income tax for the village, which is how we fund ourselves. So by having a delayed permitting process, we're holding up economic opportunity for ourselves. So I don't know if any of the businesses that are,
I'd like to do a process thing, because my understanding is we have to have a supermajority to pass.
at this vote, Judy, my understanding is
Okay,
this vote.
so if we have two people that are probably going to vote no,
I was wondering what the implications, since we're calling this an emergency.
okay, I
don't
just
wanna-
thought if you were,
I'm not, I am
You're
not necessarily voting no, Marianne.
oh, okay, I thought we might as well.
No, that isn't what I said. What I said is I would like to see the provider rate schedule. Ideally, it would be nice to see more assurance of the financial cost of service delivery versus what we're charging and the implications not only for the village. But so I am still undecided. Thank you.
Okay. Johnny wants to weigh in. Johnny, I think you can unmute yourself. And so the way when we initially set up the ordinance or the legislation request to council, we said we would bring these in different steps. We would bring the building department, then the certification, and then the adoption of a schedule, of a fee schedule, and then the contract engagement with a third-party provider. So we have plans to bring that back, but I want to reassure you that while we don't have a fee schedule before you tonight, we intend for this operation in the government to be self-sustaining, that it's not going to cost taxpayer money. It's going to be self-supporting through its fees. The concern I have with putting out our partners' names and maybe even the fee arrangements is, unfortunately, and I want to watch my words here because I feel very strongly about what Al did. We had an implied threat to one of our potential partners as we were engaging prospective partners to do this. And one of the prospective partners for this has pulled out from negotiating with us or engaging us in a potential relationship because of the implied threat that they will lose their business with the county. So I was avoiding disclosing that, but I was in the room as well as Johnny when that became known to us. Johnny, anything you want to add?
I'd like to go back to Lisa's point about adding work to staff and if it's cost, if it's going to cost us more. Right now, currently, Greene County gets 100.
Oh, darn.
Well, he was saying Greene County gets 100% of
Yes.
fees.
Okay.
Yes. You're right. Johnny, we lost you there.
Am I back?
You're
Yes.
back. You're back.
I think you guys froze and I was still talking. Greene County gets 100% of all permit fees right now, and other people are willing to work with us. Yes, we do a lot of things for the county right now. We filled a lot of questions. We make phone calls. We try to get a lot of things answered because people are not getting the answers they need. So we have staff time that we're not recouping anything for now. And the main reason why we're doing this is for economic development in the village of Yellow Springs. It has nothing to do with trying to make money. It's trying to make sure we don't lose businesses to in production, plan review, and things like that. We're talking turnaround of 10 days to 15 days versus 30, and then we're going to send you a letter, and then you've got another 30 days. So, myself and Josue have been on this a lot. We've weighed out all the options. I actually think it'd be less work by staff going with other people. That way we can be a priority and not just somebody with 3,800 people. They'll start with us, they'll end with us. Just today at 11 o'clock, I had homeowners that's been trying to get solar on a duplex that they own and a house that they've owned, and they come in and said, please, can you call Greene County and see if we can get this expedited? We have done everything that they've sold us to do, and we still cannot get past this inspection. That was just today. And it's been going on for almost a year.
Okay. Thanks, Johnny. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I would only echo a lot of what's been said. Certainly what Marianne said. I think all of the questions have been addressed. I mean, I don't think from a risk reward perspective, there's much risk involved here. The businesses want it, the staff want it. the numbers, Lisa, that you're asking for, you know, even though Josue, I've only known you for 2 years, I trust you.
Thank you, Kevin.
You tell me you're working on an arrangement where the goal is not for us to make money, but we'll have this split, whether it's 99-1 or 90-10, we'll be better off from a financial perspective than we are now because we're not getting any of that money. Being small and nimble, there are advantages to that. I work at some small liberal arts college in the Midwest. So I know small and nimble. And I suspect the point that Mary Ann was making is it sounds like we've addressed, you know, all the concerns and issues from a process perspective. I think all the questions have been answered, but I'm all for, you know, discussing it as long as we need to, you know, but I don't see a downside. Again, from a risk reward perspective, I see only positives. And if we just make $1 off of each one, that's $1 we didn't have. So unless there's some big secret that I'm not aware of, I suggest we move forward, and I would support the building department.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. All right, do we have any, Dino? Come on up to the mic, please.
Hello, Dino Pallotta, Dino's Cappuccinos. I'm going to implore you to vote yes on this. It is this important. You can't kick this down. We can't kick it down the road anymore. It's going to be another 30 days. Another 30 days. You're going to push this down. I know we can't go down this road. It's imperative. It needs to happen. I had to jump through these hoops. It was ridiculous for what I did on a small project and the delays. Now we talk about delays and what's going to be the funding that's going to come out of it. When I'm delayed, I can't get my project done. I can't make revenue. I can't make dollars, and that means tax dollars to you. That's the bottom line out of this. You're the ones that are going to stall out on the tax dollars. That not just me, Dave's projects, the YSO project, the Cresco project. These are all money items that are coming to you. And the more you delay, the more it pushes up. Greene County delays, they push us, they make us jump through hoops, and you still don't get the results. And then you got to go kick and punch. And I've dealt with Val, and I don't like dealing with Val. We didn't have a good conversation, and I had to really just. We got in an argument about this. Just give me my damn building permit, my occupancy permit. It wasn't anything major. It was something very simple. So I'm not just speaking for me. I know all our little businesses that want to do this. This is what the hoops that we have to jump through every time. And we always get placed down further down, and then it's delays from them. And it just goes that way. This is continually what happens with us. There's one thing you did forget about is the contractors of this village that also are delayed. I mean, they're the ones we could talk about our business, but you got the small business, the building contractor. I got a Spencer Building Group, for instance. He has to wait. They have every contractor that has to wait. So not only does the resident have to wait, or does the business have to wait, the contractor has to wait. So now he's out money, or he's sitting on inventory because he can't get things processed. So being quick and nimble is the way to go. And that's what we really want to implore you, is that the quicker it moves, the quicker tax dollars come back to the village. One last thing, as Josue said, there's a business meeting. There's a good group coming together. It's a formidable group. Y'all need to pay attention to the group. We bring tax dollars. One by one, we're small, but together we're pretty good size. We bring a lot of money. There's a lot of money that comes in the village just from all our small businesses. Put us together, it's a formidable process. We're watching. We want you to act in favor of us. Start paying attention to what we do and what we bring, and support us. And we'll support you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dino. Any Max?
Hi there, Max Chrome. I think most of you probably know that I'm bringing my architecture firm to Yellow Springs. So this matter is of utmost importance to me, and it's been something that's been on my mind for a long time. So I wanted to give you just the architect's perspective on the decision that's in front of you. First of all, I strongly support the establishment of a Yellow Springs building department. I've worked in hundreds of different jurisdictions of various sizes, from jurisdictions of just a couple thousand to, major metropolitan areas. And even the big ones, sometimes they sub out. New York City might sub out some of their plan checking, whereas some of the smallest jurisdictions in the world might do it in-house with a single person who's responsible for all the plan checking and all the inspections and all that. So there's precedent for any which way you want to slice it. There's precedent out there. I think the difference in fees, if there's a concern about loss of revenue or if sort of the bottom line, I think there's an opportunity to make that work regardless. You control the fees. I would happily pay 3, 4, 5, 10 times, I'm not kidding, 10 times the fees to save a month or 2 months, or in recent cases, 6 months of waiting on Greene County to respond to what our needs are. So I want to give you a couple, for examples of what can you do, for example, to help the citizens of Yellow Springs just do better. You would set the rules for the building department. For example, you can decide how permits are broken up. You might get a project started on a demolition permit just so that the contractor could get started while there's a few more weeks to review the rest of the plans and then issue the permit separately. You might get a project started with just a grading permit. Those would be things that would be within your control to set the rules for. Right now, we're operating under Greene County's rules. The same rules that apply in Xenia apply in Yellow Springs, which may not be appropriate. I think the small and nimble, you're able to respond to our very particular needs, our very particular economic development opportunities by setting the rules to your set of priorities. So I think the money issue is something that's easily solved. I haven't really studied the numbers at all. I just know that just charge your applicants as much as it takes, and they'll be happily pay it. So anyway, that's what I'd like to offer to you and encourage you to move forward with the proposal in front of you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Max.
I have a question for Max.
Yep.
One of the things that bothered me that Al Kuzma told me today is that if you submit plans and there's a problem, then you go back to the back of the line.
Yes,
part
correct.
Of that. You've worked in a lot of jurisdictions.
Yes.
Is that typical to kind of give people an incentive to get it right the first time, right?
The incentive to get it right the first time. I've worked all over the country, probably more than half of the state, certainly. Your odds of getting through any building department on the first pass is less than 5%. And that's not Greene County or things like, it's going to come back. Like that's what you expect. That's the standard. That's normal. It's very unusual to pass on the first one. It's kind of like a celebration. Yes. And you hold back 10% of your fees to deal with those comments. And the reason is, you can't put the entire building code on a set of drawings. You put those things in there that you think are needed to communicate the intent of the design. But each building department is very particular, and Greene County, I think, is a very good building department in terms of enforcing their rules, and they don't cut you a break on your rules, and they're on their rules, and they shouldn't. They stick to their rules, but that's their priorities. And so I would say it is a little unusual. The second round check usually is given priority to the first check. So you go to the back of the line, and then when you submit the first time, I think normally you'd go to the back of a different line, the line of the sort of rechecks. But there might be certain projects that have certain people's interests that, get to the front of the line. It just depends on, that's politics.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Max. Do we have any other questions or comments? Okay. So actually, since this is a second reading and an emergency reading, I'm going to formally open the public hearing. And we've heard lots of great pre-comments, but anything else before I close the public hearing?
I have one more question for Dino. Dino, would you agree with Max that you'd pay pretty much what it would take,
100%.
short of selling your business?
100%. Doesn't matter.
All right.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then we're going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes. Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, there's that supermajority here now.
Okay. All right. See?
It was here all along.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up, we have an emergency reading of Ordinance 2021-14, very similar issue. Judy, go ahead and title only, please.
This is authorizing a request to the Ohio Board of Building Standards to certify the Village of Yellow Springs to exercise commercial enforcement authority and perform inspections in accordance with the Ohio Basic Building Code and declaring an emergency.
Okay, can I get a motion? So moved.
Second.
All right, and I'm going to open the public hearing right now. And Josue, do we need to add anything?
Just add the difference from the first one to this one is that this is for commercial code.
Yep.
And yeah, and you know, I want to just, maybe I should have said this the first time. I'm not shy from conflict, but I certainly don't like ruffling the types of feathers that this has ruffled. Like I had a conversation with Brandon Huddleston, the county administrator, and normally I want those conversations to go well and explore opportunities and not have disagreements about what I consider basic things. So just, I wouldn't be pushing for this if I didn't see the economic imperative for it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council? Any other questions or comments from villagers? Okay, if not, then I'm going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, Curlis.
Yeah.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
House.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Great conversation. And thank you guys for adding that. All right. Next up, we have the second reading of Ordinance 2021-16, and we can do that by title only as well.
This is repealing Chapter 674 weeds of the codified ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, and enacting new Chapter 674 weeds and vegetation with an appendix of illustrations.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. And again, since this is a second reading, I'm going to open the public hearing. And Josue, are we starting with you?
Well, I think Nadia did a wonderful job in introducing this, that I would like to provide some history on this, that one, there's been challenging with the weeds. It goes back to a long time, and I'm glad to see that this gets resolved. Well, we're also addressing the weeds issue and manage wildlife habitat. It also addresses a conflict that we had in our zoning code with regards to citations. So this, the change not only covers everything that Nadia covered at the last presentation, but also allows for proper application of citations in the code to homeowners under the community land trust model. So that's also addressed through the weeds.
Okay. So,
And Denise and Nadia are here, and is there?
I mean, we've got Denise's memo. We did have a pretty extensive discussion of last meeting.
Correct.
Nadia, is there anything quick that you want to add?
Only to add reasons for this.
Okay.
If I can move.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, great. Comments or questions from council?
Nadia's presented it very well in the past. I have all my questions answered. Thank you.
Cool. Comments or questions from citizens? All right, Mitzi.
Hi, my name's Mitzi Miller, and I do have concern. I wrote a letter regarding the buffers that was taken out. It was a 5-foot buffer to nothing now. I still feel really strongly there should be some kind of buffer. The other concern I have is just with ornamental grasses. I imagine they're considered plants, but also, again, you know, they multiply very easily. They expand really easily. And if somebody puts them right up against somebody's property line, and other plants that multiply, I just see this as still an issue. And I wanted to share that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Laura?
So the rationale for the up against the property line is so that landowners can use their full acreage to do this. Is that correct?
Correct. And also they're running.
Yeah, if you're going to comment, please.
Nadia Malarkey, longtime village resident and former member of the Environmental Commission. So one thing that is new in this weeds and vegetation chapter, which was not there before, it was the concern about pedestrian passage. And we did add the statement that says multi-use path or sidewalk is maintained to ensure unencumbered pedestrian passage, which was not there before. So that would imply that if somebody had grasses flopping over into where it would be most detrimental for our village citizens is walking on the passage, that has been addressed. And so we've gone through this and we listened to the concerns of citizens and felt that this was the most ecological, scientific approach to encourage managed natural landscapes to reduce fossil fuel use, especially as we're living, with climate change and all that. But in terms of neighbors, that would be something that would have to be done through mediation and neighbors, because that would be a one-off situation where neighbors might have a dispute, but it doesn't seem to be the majority problem that we're facing in our village.
Okay, thanks, Nadia. And I really appreciate you highlighting that new piece, because that's another thing we're going to talk about in the manager's report is sidewalk incursion. So thank you. Seems like we've covered most of it. Yes.
Did you open public hearing?
I did, right at the beginning. And so before I close the public hearing, I did want to make a different kind of comment related to process. One thing that was interesting about Denise's memo is how, sort of documenting the amount of effort that's been put in, which I really appreciate. Nadia, thanks for bringing your expertise. But it also occurs to me that when there's an issue that's so involved, we need to hear from our council liaison, and we need to just understand and have a little bit better connection between, the kind of efforts. I think this was effort well spent, but I was surprised just to see how long and hard it was. So I just want to make sure that we're connected. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Judy, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes. Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Next up, we have an emergency reading of Ordinance 2021-19. And Judy, we can do that by title only.
Okay, this is amending Chapter 220 of the Yellow Springs Code of Ordinances to permit continuation of remote meeting attendance for members of municipal bodies and declaring an emergency.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Brianne, are you kicking this one off?
I can.
Okay. And by the way, as you're coming up, I will open the public hearing so that we've got that covered.
So there was discussion at the last meeting about whether the state legislature was going to extend the Open Meetings Act provisions to permit continuation of remote meetings. Municipal League supported that, but ultimately they did not do that when the state budget bill got passed. So the authorization that ended June 30th is now ended. However, as council and boards and commission members have discovered, this hybrid meeting model that we are currently engaged in has been demonstrative of village values as far as inclusiveness, being able to attend remotely if someone has a disability, small children at home that they need to care for. So it does give you a broader base of candidates for your boards and commissions as well as council in terms of remote participation. And if council decides that we want to encourage this hybrid remote meeting, it would not just be for emergencies that are restricting the size of public gatherings. Say a sewer main breaks here at the Bryan Center and we're going to have a remote meeting, even though it's been noticed as an in-person meeting. That is the sort of emergency meeting where you can still meet and conduct business in the event of any sort of emergency that would otherwise impact village operations to the point where you would have to cancel a meeting. So those modifications have been made as requested by council, and your meeting rules are a home rule power. So council can decide that it wants to count remote attendance as present in person for purposes of a quorum and voting.
All right, thanks. Before Brianne leaves the mic, any questions for Brianne?
Brianne, Part G really bothered me a lot because I thought that it allowed the technology to control the meeting rather than the other way around. where if there's interference with public participation in a public meeting due to technology, that the chair of the municipal body will table discussion and deliberation until it's resolved. I'm like, no, we don't, like just now, Johnny, if that couldn't have been resolved, I'm like, move on.
Well, again, that
Yeah.
as far as the chair is concerned, but there are certain things where if you're having a public hearing and you're not taking any public input because the system is down, under the open meetings law, that's something that should be tabled.
I know. So technology, at any minute, we'd have to table and stop our meeting until we could resolve technology issues.
But those are the rules as set forth under what were the provisions of the Open Meetings Act, is that the public is able to observe, and if it's a public hearing, to participate in the public hearing. So that's why it's worded that way.
And it's even more concerning to me because with the internet, it could be someone participating anywhere in the world whose technology is dicey or whatever, just because of all that. You know.
But the other thing is, because we have a hybrid model, it's not just Zoom. I mean, if they have a bad internet connection but can phone in, then if they can hear and participate in the proceedings, the chair can say that's.
And we have to wait for them to phone in.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, it hasn't held anything up so far, and that's been a year and a half. Any other questions or comments? Questions or comments from citizens?
Brian, if I may, the Yellow Springs News really wanted to be here in person, but they had some challenges and couldn't make it in person. So I don't know if you want to acknowledge them while they're on Zoom. As you know, they were very adamant about in-person meetings.
Well, without a doubt, we care about access. So I want to emphasize two things that I think are important. One is a whereas that I would have liked to have read from I guess, in introducing this legislation about inclusiveness and village values is a whereas I could see using in a lot of different resolutions. So Judy, I just wanted to put that on your radar. And the second thing is I do have one recommended change, and it's in 2020.02. And it currently says that the chair kind of handles it with the clerk or staff. And I think we should reverse that order. Keeping in mind that, we're working with a lot of volunteers and elected officials who are also doing a lot. So I would just suggest that we reverse that around. So whatever that looks like. Okay. So I guess I'm going to close the public hearing if there are no other comments or questions. All right. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you, Brianne. And then I'm going to make a motion to amend 220.02 to say clerk or staff will confer with the chair.
Second.
Okay. So let's go ahead and call the roll on that, Judy.
Yes, Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
No.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes. Okay. And then let's go ahead and vote on the legislation or the amended ordinance. And Judy, if you could call the roll again.
Yes, Curlis.
No.
McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So next up we have a first reading. So no public hearing, but we will take comments on 2021-20. And Judy, you can read that in by title only.
All right, this is accepting the annexation of 33.816 acres of property located north of East Hyde Road and west of Spillane Road from Miami Township, Greene County to the village of Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Josue?
Thank you, Brian. I'll briefly cover a presentation that we've covered with you before about what the annexation. We're talking about approximately 33 acres north of East Hyde Road and west of Spillane Road. I want to start this presentation answering some of the why. Why is it that we should be doing this? And I'll start off with the utilities because that's been raised several times at council and by citizen. Why annex Strewing versus Village of Yellow Springs from 2014 guarantees utilities to the property owner. Two, by right, the owner can build in the township and the village would have no control over subdivision planning, hence creating a public safety concern specifically to infrastructure improvements in the development. The annexation provides the village some control over subdivision and infrastructure improvements, and new housing in the village units will expand the tax base. So I wanted to start off with that because those have been questions raised. I'm covering some of the same content I've covered previously. This is a graphic from Yellow Springs News. What is the portion to be annexed into the village? Questions from council and citizen that were raised, that have been previously raised and were raised tonight is what is our utilities capacity? Can it support this development? What are the projected revenues from this development? Utilities, income tax, property tax. How would this affect our population and size? And can our schools support this development capacity? And we talk about open enrollment numbers there. From a utilities perspective, and Johnny's online as the Public Works Director, so he can weigh in on these things if you like. From a water service perspective, is easily accessible mains on the site. As you know, we have a plant capacity of 1 million gallons per day. Currently, we are producing 350 to 400,000 gallons per day. So it's less than what the capacity we have in water production. From a sewers perspective, it's easily accessible. In fact, we discovered that the sewers are not where they're supposed to be in our easements. So we've dug some of that up and we've pointed them out, and our team has dug that up to get our eyes on it. So anyway, sewers are easily accessible, sufficient capacity in a gravity fed system. This avoids the lift station that's just across the street here from us, which handles about 70% of all the flows in the village. So it's ideal location for newer lines and a direct path to the wastewater treatment facility. Electricity capacity is available and new demand is manageable. In fact, as we're looking into developing new solar generation in the village, we're anticipating some of what demand would require, what demand would come as a result of development. So we have a really good idea of what our electricity capacity is, and we're able to deliver the service required to the site. Talking about utilities, I wanna preface these next couple of slides that the numbers were based on what was initially discussed and what became public information at that time, particularly in the number of housing units. So this is just for planning purposes. There's no site plan that's been approved. In fact, the Ober team has the development of the site and where we are reviewing site plan, that comes after the annexation. That'll be discussed in future meetings. And those things have their own process. They have to go, rezoning has to go through planning and council, and any approval of development of the site also goes through planning commission, which has its own requirements. So these numbers are for planning purposes so that we have understanding of what the utilities demand will be on the site and what's the potential revenue as a result of those properties. So I want to say that so that, you know, we keep these numbers in mind, that they are just preliminary numbers. All right, so under the model of annexation into the village, there's a potential of 138 accounts with a monthly revenue of $4,498.80. That's a projected revenue of $53,985.60. If these homes were not annexed, we'll be looking at 113 accounts with a monthly revenue of $3,778. Annually, that's $45,343. What is it from an income tax perspective? Another note on here that these cost estimates for construction are pre-COVID market conditions. So this doesn't factor in the price of lumber doubling since the COVID pandemic and materials for other construction elements or other construction materials have also gone up. So we're looking at average construction of a new home for a site at $280,000. So for 138 homes in the village, we're looking at a total construction cost of $38.6 million and labor costs being 16.6. So an income tax at 1% for that work comes out to almost $250,000 in income tax. Without annexation, we'll be looking at 34. There's the values there. Now, you may be wondering, why is there a big number between construction homes under an income tax calculation and utility costs? I want to take you back to point one. The property owner is guaranteed utilities, whether they are in the village or outside of the village, while the income tax is only taxable on the portion of the homes that are in the village, which under this model will be 34 homes, and that brings the total income tax to $61,404. Property tax, here again, these numbers are pre-COVID, so on a annexation basis, we will be looking at a total assessed value of $13.5 million versus $3.3 million without annexation. So from a property tax perspective, under annexation, we'll be looking at $1.7 million of property tax value versus $424,000 without annexation. What is it going to do for population? I think we all know that Yellow Springs was a bigger community. Now, part of that is because Antioch was thriving and had a lot of students. But in terms of service delivery, our village in 1970 had over 4,500 residents. So yes, we can serve over 4,500 residents. You look at our population decline from 1970 to 2010, we saw a 30% reduction in loss of our population. Can our school capacity support this? We currently have open enrollment. This is based on school year 2019 and 2020. There were 190 students that were open enrolled into our system. So as I understand from conversations with Steve Kahn and Terry, that there is capacity in the school system. The schools need more families, need more students. So annexation, improving the housing stock in the village should help attract more families, more students. And in closing, I want to reference again this article from 2018 from the Yellow Springs News, and I believe Megan Bachman wrote this. She referenced a report from 1972 on local housing needs prepared by the League of Women Voters and the Community Planning Committee, and I quote, "If the world out there does not decrease its demand for housing in Yellow Springs and we do not attempt to meet some of the demands, we will become more and more of an upper middle class community. We must recognize that if we make a decision not to grow, we are making a decision to eliminate low and moderate income families from our community." This is 1972. And that is the end of my presentation.
All right. Thank you, Josue. So I know we've got our folks from Oberer here. Were you planning to comment or just hear if there are questions?
I'd like to answer questions if any exist.
Okay, great. All right, council. Questions, comments?
Well, Josue, thank you for this presentation. It's very, very informative. We appreciate it. I've been talking, as you all know, to a lot of the residents in the area. I won't emphasize the point of our conversation, but it was about traffic and what can be done to resolve potential traffic going through the neighborhood. But what we did talk about, a lot of folks had questions about the timeline. And Josue, if I'm not mistaken, I think in another report or another presentation, you did have a timeline of the events that would happen over time. And if you could, for our next meeting, when I anticipate folks participating in the public comment portion, we could have that timeline available. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Laura?
I have two. Construction costs being what they are and land costs being what they are, I think these two quotes are like totally inapplicable now. I think that this development in no way is going to be a low, moderate income development. It's just almost not possible in Yellow Springs anymore. Now, we'll bring in more families, yes, and that's seems to be what people would like to see happen. The other thing I would really love, is if it had an access to 68. Because I do hear the traffic concerns. There's been calls for traffic study, I agree. And just it would be easier for everybody and also for public safety because the fire department is right there on 68 and they can zoom down 68 and get into that development. It just seems to make a lot of sense to me. I know you don't own the land, but gosh darn it, you're good at making deals. I hope you can figure that one out. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, anything?
Well, I mean, what I'm still parsing at this point, are two different decisions that council has to make. What I understand is before council right now is annexation. And what we're primarily focusing on is utility capacity and the ability of utilities to support the development, the projected revenues, the effect on population and size, and the impact on our schools. We're not approving a plan. Right. So, I mean, to me, that's two different things. So I just think it's important to keep those separated because for me, having an annexation builds our engagement with the intended project and with the community. And if we don't go forward with annexation, we're just going like, whoop, we're out of it. Peace out. And so that for me, that's what I've been thinking about and trying to keep those things separate. There's a lot of work to do still in the future. That's just what I'm thinking. I mean, am I right? It's separate topics,
yep,
right?
Right. It's the plan and the annexation have been conflated. I think Josue, you did an excellent job of staying focused on the decision we're making now. But I will say, I want to add to Lisa's point because the reason why we don't want to be out of it is because we then can think about the affordability piece. How can we have some affordable housing within this development? Yeah, we all know, right? Most housing is not low income, but we can actually be at the table to talk about that, as well as things like traffic studies. And by the way, I know that things have been done already and there's an intention to do those things. So I expect most people writing letters aren't just jumping to the conclusion that we're not going to do anything.
Right.
But that they're just indicating that this is a priority for them. We're listening as is Ober. Marianne, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. Well, I support the annexation. I support the project. And I've had the occasion to meet with some of the Ober team and our team several times over the past year, I guess. And I have felt good about those meetings. In particular, I felt good that the village government was able to say, we would really like a variety of homes, not just all the $400,000, $500,000 homes. And to date, Ober has heard that and has made modifications. And I know this is still a moving target, but I appreciated that because I think one thing that's important in Yellow Springs is to have a variety of kind of sizes and types of houses, clearly price range too, but for different family, different household types. And no one said this is going to be a moderate low income development. That no one has said that. And to the degree that we can have some moderate priced homes and some homes for lower income people, that's a bonus. And the fact that we bring more houses into the community will have some impact on ameliorating housing prices in a very, very tight market. I suspect that the traffic issue is a bit overblown. I mean, I think the fear is probably higher than the reality would be. At the same time, I do support having a traffic study. And if there were a way to have an entrance from 68, and if Xylem were willing to consider using that property in some way and having a route go in through there, I certainly support at least considering that. And I'm sorry that wasn't able to be brought to the table earlier, or if it was, that we didn't really push it for. So I will vote yes on that.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. Do we have any questions or comments from citizens? Yes, come on up.
Well, mine is Susan Alberto, and I had a couple of comments, but I thought I heard Kevin say something about at the next meeting, we'll be open for public comments regarding this. Is that true?
We'll have a second reading where we'll actually take the formal vote. But if you have any comments you want to make tonight, you're welcome.
Well, my comment, I was going to make some mention about the traffic issue. And I don't have any preconceived notions of what the development will do to traffic, but I would hope that prior to any final plan about where there will be egress and whatever the other part is, ingress, that there will be a study and there will be the decisions will be made based on actual information as opposed to the developer plan or what seems most workable. And that was primarily what I was going to say, but then I did want to react to the comment Josue made about the Megan Bachman article and just the fact that what is likely proposed is a far cry from what Megan said. And so hoping that, I was glad to hear that there have been conversations that will hopefully allow us to have more of a variety of incomes able to live in Yellow Springs in that development. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Sure.
My name is Rick Smith. I represent the Over companies. I actually appreciate the council's comments and wanted to address a couple of them. One, I just want to point out that Ober already owns the 33 acres, and it is already zoned for single-family residential development in the township. So it will be a development one way or the other. We very much would like for it to be developed in the village of Yellow Springs. Part of the land is in the village, the northern portion, and we see it as one neighborhood and would like it to be in the same community. We see that as a benefit. Once annexed, it is our intent to submit to the village for a PUD, planned unit development. The planned unit development process is something we're very familiar with. It is more of a negotiated development process with a plan commission, the village staff, and honestly the council, who will make the final decision on a PUD. So we hope that the PUD will offer, more diversity than a traditional zoning would allow in housing stock. What those prices will be with what construction costs are doing is a little bit hard to foresee, and you're correctly around that. As far as the traffic study goes, we have done some preliminary traffic counts and information. The site currently has 3 points of ingress egress for a little over 100 homes. I know that Brian is very familiar with our Oak Brook community there in Sugar Creek Township. We went through the Regional Planning Commission when he was serving on that board. It has about 100, so it's about our most comparable subdivision in size. May not be in style of homes, but definitely in size. And it has one ingress easement. There is never a wait to turn left or right in and out of that community, and I go there about 3 times a week. Our residents have no trouble getting in and out, and the people coming down, I believe that's Little Sugar Creek Road, have no trouble getting past it. So, yes, one house is one car more, and by definition, 100 houses is more traffic. But we will hire Choice One Engineering, which I believe is an engineering organization that this village also uses. We've used them for years to do a professional traffic study. We will share that traffic study with the village. And if it results in needs, we'll address them then. But I do not believe that will have a traumatic impact on the traffic within the neighborhood. We like the fact that it's a very quiet, non-transversed area. We do not own the land that would make a connection to 68 possible. To be honest, we prefer not to have that connection, mostly because, again, we like the very quiet feel of the neighborhood, and we want to maintain that. And we feel that a connection to 68 would encourage cut-through traffic that is not currently perceived in our current development plan. The plan we have laid out would give nobody really a reason to cut through the neighborhoods that we're not currently going through the neighborhoods, where a connection to 68 would encourage that type of cut through, which may have a bigger impact on traffic than our additional housing. And so, our desire is to maintain the very quiet feel of the neighborhood. And happy to answer any questions you may have now. I know I'm going to be back in 2 weeks. Happy to answer questions then. And I know I'll be back through a PUD process, which often takes several months to go through. So I'll be happy to answer questions then as well. You'll be seeing a lot of me in the next 6 months to a year, and probably be tired of hearing my name, but I appreciate you taking patience with me. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
I do have one question.
Yep.
There. You mentioned the planned 3 points of egress and whatever the other word is. What are those three?
I don't have the street names memorized, so please forgive me. The south gate would be the access to the north. There is an access to the southeast. Spillane, yes. And then there is a planned road that was never put in also that would access to a cul-de-sac to the east, and I'm not sure what that road is called. Yes, thank you, I appreciate that. So those 3 points would be the points of access. We see the primary entrance as a Spillane entrance, the other two is secondary.
Okay. Well, I'd definitely be interested in seeing what the results of the traffic study is. And I don't want to get into a debate about what 68 entrance would do, but I think it would be a good idea to strongly consider that as a possibility. Depending on how I think the streets in the neighborhood, how they eventually get laid out, I live at the corner of Spillane and Southview. I don't imagine I cut through this neighborhood to get home. But
honestly,
anyway.
It's not the people who live next door, and we weren't worried about it. It'd be the ones who live on the other side of town using it as a shortcut.
Understood. But look forward to more information.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
And great that you guys have committed to that, because I know you guys are listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I have something more to add. Two things. Thank you, Greg. Greg is embarking on his own study, and we have started our own preliminary traffic study. We set up a traffic count and speedometer on Spillane Road. So we're able to, over the reporting period here, which is from May 31st to June 16, and we'll have it we had it through the end of June, and we've been tracking it. We'll analyze the data. But just in the preliminary research, we're seeing a count, and we're talking with the team about how much the count means, because we had these are the number of vehicles that were traveling at X number of speeds. And we started down this path because we received complaints about speeding on Spillane Road, and it was a request that came to council back, I believe, in March, April, and we put the speed count, the speedometer and vehicle count out there in May. So we started down this path looking for how much speeding was happening on Spillane Road, and we were surprised to see such a small amount of speeding happening. So the number of people that are speeding, you're talking about what's really the above 31 miles per hour speed. So our data shows that there isn't a whole lot of speeding happening, or in terms of vehicle count. We're seeing a lot of vehicle count, but our hypothesis is that there's a lot of cyclists.
I was going to ask, does this distinguish between cars and motorized, non-motorized?
No, because it's able to track anything moving between 1 and 5 miles.
That's me in my golf cart, you mean?
It's literally me cutting my grass and my family racing to see who can get the highest speed.
Oh, so you've done your own speed test there.
Yeah, we've bumped the numbers.
So let me suggest that we cut this off, bring it back when we start talking more about traffic, because I do want to be mindful of, we're almost on schedule.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out that we are doing our own vehicle count and our own preliminary traffic study, and welcome to see Choice One's traffic study on this.
Right. And again, just being mindful that we're talking about the annexation tonight. Right. But I'm glad that these issues are coming up, and I know they'll continue to come up. Any other questions or comments from citizens? Yes, please.
Get old where your body talks to you. My name is Wardell Kirk. Just a couple of questions and observations. One is, it almost seems like annexation is not an option to turn down because, as was stated, no attack or anything, it's happening, regardless. So to be able to have some sort of input would tend to be critical. Couple things. One of the things that I did not see, and I don't know if it's been taken into consideration, are safety and health concerns. Because now you're increasing the population there, so you're increasing the safety risk with crime, et cetera. The other thing that, and no knock on your presentation, but coming from finance, anytime I see revenue numbers, I want to see expense numbers. Because there is an expense that's going to offset that increase in needs, taking care of things and staff and et cetera, to see those kind of things taken into consideration. But basically, those were the main concerns that I would have and want to see it addressed. I was there when all that was fields, and so, it's easy when you live on the north side of town to say, well, it's going to be okay, on the south side, because, as Southgate began to grow, it brought on its own issues. We talk about the stress on the utilities and things like that. Those of us who are out in Southgate know we had those brownouts and, power's out, and stuff like that, and we're going to increase the capacity or the need, so I do think those have to be really taken into consideration.
All right, thanks for that input. And so I think to those points, if we could add like some projections around expenses for the next meeting, specific to the annexation, and safety and health will be part of our discussions when we get to the development plan. All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, Judy, let's call a vote. But remember, we do have a second reading, and that's when we'll have the official public hearing and all that. But let's go ahead and call a vote.
All right, Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the input, everyone. And we're going to move into our last bit of legislation. We have 3 pieces of legislation that are kind of housekeeping. So Judy, let's go ahead and do Ordinance 2021-21 by title only, and then Denise will kind of get us up to speed on what we're doing.
This is amending Chapter 1262 regarding expiration and specific requirements, transient guest lodging.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. So Denise, tell us what we're doing.
Yes. Planning Commission has made several recommendations to 1262. The first in 1262-05 is changing the expiration date for a conditional use approval from 12 months to 24 months. And this is because of not only just from the delays from the building department, but because of COVID, we now have material delays. People aren't getting, even a survey can take 3 months for people to get. The building materials can take 3 to 6 months, even appliances, it gets to that point. So we just felt that making people come back after 12 months is ridiculous at this time. And we wanted to at least extend it to 24 months with an extra, then they could come back for an extension of 12 more months. So that was that one. Then 1262-08 within the same chapter, Planning Commission has struggled around the question of what is too much transit guest lodging in a neighborhood as far as density goes. What really changes the makeup of a neighborhood with too much transit guest lodging, and it was very subjective. Staff created a transit guest lodging map, but even that really doesn't show it. And so Planning Commission suggested making that a little clearer for staff and is suggesting that transient guest lodgings have to be at least 500 feet away from other transient guest lodgings, measured from the closest property line to the closest property line. The other change is let's see. Designated smoking area. We had people that have neighbors that have complained about people smoking. Obviously, in the public right of way, there isn't any law preventing them from going out in the street or on the sidewalk to smoke. But within these transient guest lodging properties, that was suggested by Planning Commission that the TGL owners would need to, or operators would need to create a designated smoking area that's at least 15 feet away from any neighboring property line. And lastly, for the non-operator occupied transit guest lodgings, which, there are not that many, we do now have a moratorium on those. But for those operators of non-operator occupied transit guest lodgings, that we are going to require commercial insurance for those because they are operating it as a business enterprise. And that's, I think, all the changes for Chapter 1262.
Okay. Questions for Denise?
Yeah, 500 feet. Is that like half a block? What is that? Block?
Football field, and then some.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Thanks.
Oh, there was one other change I just noticed that we also had under maximum occupancy. We had for some reason we had it in there as applicable health department requirements, and the health department doesn't issue the occupancy certificates. It's actually right now it's the building department, but we decided to just say health, safety, and welfare entities, basically, that do that. So that was the other one.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about this ordinance from council? Okay. Questions or comments from citizens? Mitzi?
I'll just share something real quickly.
Okay. You should probably come up to the mic. We don't want our audience at home to miss it.
Mitzi Miller. I have an Airbnb, but I don't do it online at all. Typically, it's just with the, if there's like yoga workshops or something like that. So I did really research a little bit about insurance. And there are some homeowners policies that will allow you to, with insurance, if you do it 30 days or less than a year. So I think having some kind of insurance policy, I think is a really good idea. But I think that's something people need to research.
Okay. Thanks, Mitzi. Okay. Anything else? All right. If not, we're not going to vote on this tonight, so we can move on to the next legislation. Okay. And that is Ordinance 2021-22. Title only, please, Judy.
This is amending Chapter 1268 regarding expiration.
Okay.
Same thing, I won't go into it again. It's just changing the site plan approval from 12 months to 24 months.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any questions or comments? Okay. And then, Judy, let's go ahead and read the last one in 2021-23, title only.
Amending Chapter 1278 regarding decisions of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay, Denise?
This one is just a little wordsmithing cleanup. We had in the language that the variance granted by the board shall expire, and variances are permanent once they've been issued. So we just using the term lapse.
Okay.
That's it. And also saying 24 months again, it's from 12.
Okay, right. When we change one, we often have to change others. Questions or comments? Okay, we are done with legislation. Thank you, Denise. And we're moving into the citizen concerns portion. If there are any comments that anyone has related to something not on the agenda, we allow a maximum of 3 minutes. Judy will let you know when you hit that if you do. So do we have any citizen concerns? All right, Mitzi Miller.
Hi, my name's Mitzi Miller. Just recently, last week, I had an article in the paper about non-accessible sidewalks and unsafe sidewalks. I just wanted to give council an update and make a recommendation. I have actually gone to homeowners who are in violation and have had fairly respectful conversations about it and willingness to make changes. And I've seen that in my own neighborhood on West Davis already, where I've contacted probably 4 or 5 people. I also contacted a pollinator garden individual today, and that was on the south end of town, whose sidewalks were overgrown with pollinator plants, and had a good conversation. But what I did find was people were asking me if I was from this village or I worked for the village. And I would like to see council take a stronger position and put something in the paper that specifies the ordinance in detail, so they realize that we have the support of the village and council as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitzi. I appreciate those comments, and maybe it's just timely to say a few more things right now about that. One of those being, I mean, I walk around, bike around town a lot, and going to the 4th of July fireworks, I was particularly, I mean, I couldn't believe that, I mean, there's an area on High Street where the bushes just literally are covering the whole sidewalk. And I also saw some really innovative treatments. There's one house, and I need to go back and take some pictures, where they've built sort of a wood, like maybe, kind of 2 stacks. And so it captures keeping any of the, plants right there, and it stays off the sidewalk. So they built it right on the edge. It looks easy to maintain. And it occurred to me that one of the things we need to factor in is that some people probably just need some help in complying, some support, some advice, some conversations like it sounds like Mitzi's having. And so I feel strongly that, and, we've talked about this in the past, and we've, made some progress, and then other things got in the way, but I wholeheartedly agree. And so I think maybe it's enough just to kind of highlight those things for now. And I know it's on the village's radar.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Brian. First, I want to applaud you, Mitzi, for doing what you're doing, because it has had an impact. Your letter and talking to the neighbors, I have seen some progress being made. And I agree with you, Brian, that there's some things, particularly High Street, that not only are they encroaching on the sidewalk and making it difficult for people to get around, but they also are blocking vehicle views from folks from being able to see oncoming traffic and pedestrians. So over the next couple of weeks, we are going to resume what we did for the Safe Return to School campaign, where we did a lot of knockers. So we'll do that in a non-punitive way. A lot of folks have concern about how threatening our citation letters are. And I think that's the point of the letter, right? That there's a violation in place and they need to do something. So we'll do the knockers before we move on to the citation and monitor what response that does. So it will be a sort of a friendly notice or a warning that folks' grass, weeds, gardens are encroaching in not just the public right-of-way, but the visibility of cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists.
Okay, so let's have an update about this at the next meeting.
I had one thought, and actually I talked to Mitzi. I'm not sure what the active transportation committee is doing or not doing, but to me that this could fit under that umbrella, because being able to walk on the sidewalk, or for kids to bike on the sidewalk, or wheelchairs, whatever, is active transportation. And I think it's going to take more than something in the paper, maybe even more than, I think there has to be a campaign, multi-pronged campaign. And if it could fall under active transportation, if maybe get school kids that need community service. I don't know, but
Right.
have some kind of major program so we actually are doing what we say we're doing to being walkable and bikeable.
Yep. Cool. I agree. Other citizen concerns?
I have a request to read it, read in a letter.
Okay.
It's from Carolyn Qualls. She says, I live in the heart of downtown on Dayton Street. I am the person who's kept this block's sidewalks and grassy places free from cigarette butts, broken glass, trash, and debris for the last decade, as I pick them up weekly. Each of you has most likely seen me early in the morning on one of my pickups. I provide this service to my community because I love this village and the environment and want my children and fellow villagers to have a safe and beautiful place to walk. I'm writing to you all today because there is an immediate solution needed for the downtown trash cans. For the last couple of months, I have needed to provide the additional service on Saturdays of removing bags of overflowing trash from around and out of the 4 cans. I've been removing the top third of the can by gloved hand to make more room for additional trash for Saturday night and Sunday, as the trash is not removed by the village until Monday morning. After special events like the Pride Parade, the current trash removal schedule is even more inefficient. I've made it my responsibility to pick up trash on this block, but it is the village's responsibility to find a solution to the trash can issue. Possible solutions suggested: 1, more permanent trash cans on Dayton Street; 2, temporary trash cans added on weekends only during summer and fall. They are used for street fare provided by Rumpke. 3, village employee responsible for emptying the cans Saturday morning or evening. Or 4, outsource the Saturday pickup to another willing party or villager. And that is from Carolyn Qualls.
All right. Thank you, Judy. This was something I was going to bring up in manager's report, but maybe we can just take care of it here. I think these are great constructive suggestions. I'd love to see, Josue, what you and the team can do over the next 2 weeks, because it does seem urgent, especially since we're in the height of our destination season. And then it'd be great to get a report back on what has been done, what could be done, what's not so doable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other citizen concerns? Yes.
I decided to be a gnat, so.
Once you get to a meeting, it's hard not to.
Just an observational concern. One of the things that I have a question about is the identity of Yellow Springs. Have we locked in on what is Yellow Springs? I hear a lot about economic development, but in going for economic development, we can get away from who we are. And not knowing who we are can have an adverse impact on who we become. Coming here from the 60s, of course, Yellow Springs is not like it was in the 60s, but it had that atmosphere and the way it existed. I was sharing with my family and some friends that moving here from Dayton, Yellow Springs saved my life. That I shared with my mom because of where we lived, that it would not have been good, basically, but it did because of who Yellow Springs was. I see it becoming more homogenized, that we're becoming more like everyone else. I was sharing a story, living in Northern California with Bodega Bay up there, that how the community fought to stay Bodega Bay when the Department of Transportation would put up the signs, "This is Bodega Bay," the citizen will go down and take it down. We are who we are.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to put in there that as we're moving forward, that we make sure that we know who we are and maintain that, because as we bring these organizations in or departments and stuff like that, because, you have a PUD coming in, generally you have an HOA with it, and everything becomes generic. And there's this look, and when we look at people and what Yellow Springs is known for, has been known for, it's not necessarily the houses in the way, because we've gotten away from that uniqueness that we had when we had designers and developers coming in and saying, "Oh, let me put this," and every house looked different. Now you're beginning to get every house looks the same. Is it a welcoming, open community, that people can feel safe in? That's why I brought up the safety and health issue, because more numbers mean, and we've already seen that here with the increased need for safety concerns, stuff. So my big thing was to make sure that's my question to you, do we have that in place? This is who we are. You know, because I remember the fight when Kentucky Fried wanted to come in. They had to take us to court, you know, to get in here because we wanted that. This is who we are, you know, and we're not going to change that because when we talk about economic development, there are a lot of options. And just along that line, but touching on something else, when we talk about developing the community and we talk about diversity, there is, I'm in mortgage industry, there is a big difference between affordable housing and low to moderate income, you know, because affordable housing is not available to low to moderate income.
Yep. Those comments, I'll say, really resonate with this council. And if you continue to be a fan of these council meetings, you're going to see that every issue we dig into that. So very appreciate it.
May I add a quick
yes.
comment? So I'm the liaison to a village commission called Art and Culture Commission. And we're not just about, you know, like art as in paintings and things like that. We're about the cultural expression of what does it mean to be Yellow Springs. And lately, our commission has been increasingly concerned about, like, what is the vibe? Like, what does it mean to be Yellow Springs? And how do we preserve the authentic nature? And how does that express itself with buskers or other forms of public art expression? And so that's actually starting in a meeting tomorrow, a hot agenda for our organization. We're really trying to hear more stories about what was Yellow Springs historically and what has been lost. So I would welcome you to reach out to me. I'd love to talk with you about that experience because I think we're drifting. And I think that as we move towards having more policy, which we need for safety in some cases, we risk losing that unique nature. So it's really exciting to hear you talk about that and understand it's really a focus for us right now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. I think we're going to move into our special report about municipal broadband.
All right. Thank you, Brian. I have also a presentation for this, and I will cover the updates. What's different since the last time I presented on this? As you know, the state budget bill for 2022 included detrimental language to ban community broadband networks. That included public Wi-Fi's. There was a major advocacy effort by us, some members of council. We participated in meetings with representatives and state senators. We engaged American Municipal Power and a few other groups to rally behind an effort to change that. And Lieutenant Governor and the governor were very supportive of the advocacy efforts and ultimately was removed from the bill. So what does that mean is that we're able to move forward with community broadband networks, including public Wi-Fi's. For those in the audience, this language by the Senate would have banned not just public Wi-Fi's like ours in a downtown, but it would also ban the information technology centers which provide internet services to the schools. So the schools would then have to buy broadband and bandwidth from private internet service providers. So it would have been really bad for the schools. So I'm happy to report that change happened. I'm happy to announce that we are recipients of a $300,000 grant from Broadband Ohio. The Broadband Ohio office is within the governor's office. So we received this award a week before the news broke out that the Senate intended to ban community broadband networks. So I'm excited that we were able to accomplish this. We couldn't do this on our own. We did this in partnership with Enveca, which is the internet provider for village government and the schools. We couldn't do this without Yellow Springs Schools and SpringsNet. And SpringsNet is the citizen group who have been mobilizing for over 6 years now.
We're getting close to six.
Which I think it's impressive that in 6 years we've got a Wi-Fi downtown. We got the wireless mesh that they had been hoping for a long time.
Most communities, it takes about 10 years.
Yeah, so if all goes as planned, as we intend, as you'll see in the next couple of slides, we're going to beat that average. So SpringsNets have been very successful, very supportive, innovative in the space. I've had the conversation with the group. I've had a serious conversation, said, okay, you did a lot of this effort. You did a lot of marketing around this. If we're going to move forward with municipal broadband, I don't want to reinvent the wheel and come up with a new marketing scheme and a new message. Like, we don't want you to. We want you to use everything that we've done. So SpringsNet has agreed to donate its name, its assets, that includes all the research, all the work that they've done on this to the project. So I think it's a big deal because that springboards our efforts to establishing a municipal broadband. I've had conversations with the committee and MVEC about operating capacity. As Sean knows very well, and I'm sorry to put Sean in the situation where we temporarily put the fiber switches right here in Channel 5 because all of our fiber terminates here. So we've identified what is the capacity, and we'll be making some changes to how the topography or the network design it's currently. So we'll make some improvements there, but we've had the operating capacity to launch our municipal broadband. We've got the fiber backbone. The $300,000 grant from Broadband Ohio would help us accomplish two things. One is to reinforce the backbone connection along Dane Street to Mbeka. Right now we have 32 count fiber going to the data center. With Thor, we've been talking about future-proofing our network and installing more fiber down Dayton Street to give us all the capacity we need now and in the future. So we reviewed that, and we're also reviewing technology. What is the equipment that we will use? So over the next couple weeks, as we roll out the RFPs for the $300,000 grant that we receive, we're going to test equipment. These are switches that go on the poles, media converters that can be attached to the house, and modems that go in the house where the residents or businesses, that residents and business owners attach their routers to create their networks in the home. So we'll be vetting the technology. We have several options available to us, and we're learning from other municipalities that have already done this. So we're taking lessons learned from other providers so that we don't have to learn from the beginning. We're going to learn from the wisdom of other municipalities of what they developed. So in a nutshell, that's the updates. I'm happy to.
Just a question about, so the reinforcing the backbone on Dayton Street. So I assume you guys are thinking about opportunities to tie that in with our active transportation plan project?
Well, we because of the timing of the project, or active transportation would take place for another 2 years. Thor already has space on the communications line on the poles. So we don't, from a cost perspective, we're adding it to an existing line and rights that are on the pole.
Okay.
So it's easier to do it that way. It's more cost effective than say,
sure.
I think the project or something to consider in the future as we build out the shared path along Dayton Street is moving some of those lines underground. And that's something that we will look into, as we are required to look into, part of our Dig Once policy.
Right. And then safe routes to school, same thing.
And
if
safe
there's
routes to school,
opportunities.
right.
Okay.
Right.
So were you opening it up for questions?
Well, I have, as you know, I have a presentation that talks about the internet problem in the village. It's slow and inconsistent. It's crucial for everyday things such as school and learning, the healthcare, finding a job and telework, and economic recovery. There's a lot of changes happening in the workplace. There are businesses that have said they're not going back to their corporate headquarters and their highly concentrated office buildings. So a work from home is going to become more common practice. And I think as a community, we need to position ourselves to provide an infrastructure where people can work from home. So that's the value proposition there. We've built out fiber infrastructure, public Wi-Fi. These things together help stabilize community and spur economic development. Give you a good example, maybe even a small example is we're able to host a farmer's market here in the parking lot, and we provide Wi-Fi access so their credit card devices connect to a secured network right here at the John Bryant Center. Things as simple as that. During the pandemic, we had school children going to the school's parking lot, the library parking lot, to have access to their school resources. So, those things are important. Helps build equity and close the digital divide. So many values to it. So I'll just remind the audience and council that phase 1 included building that fiber backbone in the downtown and installing 12 industrial grade access points with speeds over 1.3 gigabits per second. That's really fast. Free public Wi-Fi, we've committed to providing unlimited speeds in our public Wi-Fi. I've clocked it myself. I measure the speed. I've gotten 150 megabits per second. That's faster than I get with my high-end internet service at home. So it's good, reliable internet. Phase 2 was expanding the fiber and public Wi-Fi to some of our most vulnerable community members, Corey Street Apartments and Hawthorne Apartments. And we also built out to the wastewater treatment facility in down Corey Street. Phase 3 is the home pilot project. This is to install fiber to the home and business to what was initially 162 locations. We were initially pursuing a grant opportunity with the county simultaneously as we were pursuing an opportunity with Broadband Ohio. Or Broadband Ohio came. We were successful with that opportunity, and they gave us more money, $300,000. So we're able to expand the pilot project to what is now 310 homes and business. So it would include all of the downtown locations that you see in this map and an additional service location. So we'll aim to connect properties along High Street, along the Hawthorne Apartments and Corey Street Apartments where we already have infrastructure. So what we're looking to do in this phase 3 is optimize the resources that we have already installed. We've got fiber there already. It's easier to bring in a fiber connection from those poles into the home. And our ultimate goal is to bring fiber to everyone in the village. So what do we need to be able to do this? We need to formally establish a municipal broadband utility. That requires council action to establish a municipal enterprise to provide broadband. And so my ask for you tonight is to consider us bringing back legislation to establish a municipal broadband. This is something that our community has discussed for at least 6 years. Council has had this discussion in the past, including under my tenure, where council has overwhelmingly supported resolutions to launch fiber and broadband in the village. How are we going to serve our most vulnerable residents or low-income residents? Our business model includes the Lifeline program. How do we bring internet service to our low-income residents? So we're following standard practices. The Lifeline program is a program that's endorsed by the FCC and provides resources to fund it. So it's important for us to build a percentage of Lifeline customers into our business model so that we can ensure the fiscal sustainability of our enterprise. We're not new in this space. As of when I initially created this presentation several months ago, and the research that SpringsNet folks had done, over 89 municipalities had fiber to premise networks in the U.S. and more than 750 communities in the U.S. had built their own internet infrastructure. In fact, we don't have to see very far to know where these networks are. Clifton has its own community network. Someone in the community said enough is enough. They built their network. In Ohio, we have several communities. One of the more successful one is Fairlawn, where they've installed their own fiber to the home network with 1 gigabit speeds per second. So we're not new in the space. From a strategy perspective, launching the pilot in July allows us to really have the proof of concept, build a revenue stream, and the revenue streams are important as we look to finance what would be a $3 million development project. Now that $3 million price tag has come down significantly because of the free money that we have received, the grants that we have received. So a revenue bond is the way that we're looking to fund the full build out of the program. And having that developed revenue stream would allow our finances to look better for able to seek funding from a port authority. We have 2 port authorities that are interested in partnering with us. And so we've got good opportunities to get it funded. Now, the work that I'm doing on the port authority is not new. SpringsNet folks actually had meetings with port authorities, and they were eager to jump on this back then. And I think, Kevin, you were part of those meetings. So the opportunity for us is even better now because we've already built some of this infrastructure. We're not new to the game. We are running some form of a community broadband network. What's the market opportunity? Again, it'll take $3 million to build this. In total, it would cost about $4 million over 20 years with revenue of $13 million. The pro forma, the model that we have now, we would be revenue positive after 10 months and profitable after 23 months. And that's my presentation. I think I stayed within the time limit.
Yep, excellent job. All right, questions?
We don't want to be profitable. We want to break even, right? So we keep the cost down.
The idea of, that SpringsNet's always talked about is that we have to invest that, any excess back into the system to keep it vibrant. So.
And I know I saw a couple of slides about it's better service that I'm convinced of at a lower cost. How are you convinced of that?
Based on our pro forma, our cost is going to be below what current market rates are. So we have several scenarios of what a pricing tier will look like.
But maybe you can just start with Lavecca has done this elsewhere.
Oh, correct.
So we've got plenty of data.
Right. So from a price perspective, it's going to be lower than what AT&T and Spectrum currently offers in the market. It's going to be more secure from a net neutrality perspective. So there's all these other added features that we can provide that the private sector cannot provide.
So if somebody like me pays $60 a month now, I could expect that to be lower.
Yes, and if you still want to pay 60, we will more than triple your speeds. We can offer you 1 gigabit speeds for about the same price.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Lisa?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the grant. I'm very positive about this. I think the one thing that I'd like to see included in future presentations has to do with what I am making up in my head is called infrastructure competition, right? We've talked about capacity over and over. And so, what is the team? It's a big project, right?
Yes.
So like in future presentations, like what might be done by current employees of the team if, right? And what potential impact could moving forward on this project have on team capacity? Just because to me, that's another, we talked earlier about direct and indirect costs. But with that said, I'm a remote worker and bring it, So yeah, thank you, Josue.
Yes, those are excellent points. And one of the, when I mentioned operating capacity within Becca, one of the things we talk about is how to provide the different layers of customer service. You got outages. So what is required to, if we have a storm and a fiber line goes down, what are we required to do? What are the resources that level of customer service required? That's something that in the current version of our business plan does not include bringing on that additional staff, and we will have an operating agreement with Becca for that kind of support services. What we do want to create in-house is perhaps a in-house customer service folks that they will call a village number and they will get a representative like you do now for your internet service provider. So there could be an initial level of troubleshooting. Someone says my internet out is, well, someone can log into the computer and they can see if that modem is connected. If that modem is not connected, okay, you got a connection issue. The modem could be off, power could be not going to it, or there could be a connection issue on our side. So we're exploring how to best provide that 24-hour customer service experience, because internet is very much like electricity. It needs to be up and running 24/7. So there's expertise that we have in-house that we can leverage to deliver the service, and there are things that we know we don't have, and we're going to rely on third-party providers. That includes Inveca, but also service providers in the community. We are blessed to have very techie entrepreneurs in the community that are already providing the service, and this would enhance, or they can enhance our service, and we enhance their business by being able to partner on things. So we are looking at things, which is why it's important that we price this right. So as I mentioned, the 23 months, that's a good, if you will, profitability model. Once we reach that point where we have recouped our investment, we could evaluate service reinvestments and maybe price adjustments.
Your value propositions are always very solid. I just want to see a full, not just the rose-colored glasses, just kind of a balanced total impact kind of a thing going forward. Thank you.
Marianne, did you have anything? Okay, Kevin.
So first of all, thank you, Josue. And I won't ask you now to do it, but the pilot project with the map and the various color sections, maybe next time we talk about this, maybe describe what those different colors indicate.
Okay.
And it really cannot be overly stated how big a deal it is that what SpringsNet has done, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the other people involved. The expertise, the use of their name. I mean, this is like a small consulting firm with the level of expertise and the information that they've provided to this effort. So definitely want to give a big shout out to those folks, and we look forward to working with them further down the road. And I think south of Midtown is a real good place to consider extending the pilot to. Just saying.
I would just like to add to the SpringsNet folk. I'm sorry I didn't name them, but they deserve name recognition, and that's Thor, Scott, and Tim. Scott Fife, Tim Barhorst, and Thor Sage. So. Yeah, I couldn't ask for a better team to be working on this. And the folks that came before them as well, right? Amy and Magnus was part of this, and so were other members. Brian, you've been part of this. So,
since we started in 2014 with the Fiber Forum, and my comment was going to be, I would like to see at least a web page that has this PowerPoint, other resources. There are videos from that Fiber Forum, because I think now is the point to, reach widely to let the public know about this, why it's exciting, how it's going to be great for the community. And then I would want Philip to do a Facebook post to promote that webpage once it's ready. Okay.
So I hear that we can come back with a proposal. Great. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Great presentation. Okay, so we're hopping to no old business. New business is the request for a support letter, which ideally would also include a $12,000 match. I think everyone's read the letter. I'll just weigh in. This is something we've been talking about doing for a long time. It's in our goals. It's really amazing. I understand that HomeInc has the capacity to deliver on a program like this. It does leverage a lot of funds. I'm again going to note it's never ideal, and I know sometimes these opportunities come, last minute, but at a minimum, it's always better if we get this request at least a meeting before, right? Because the challenge now is we haven't budgeted this. It's great. Not sounds great, it is great, but it does put us in an awkward position. So, and I know that might not have been an opportunity to do that, but just as a reminder, we need as much advance notice as we can get.
Am I correct? The request is for 2022? So.
Why did I see 12,000?
The request is to make that
budget
commitment.
year 2022.
Right, but
Where we're not, yeah.
I know, but
And we're
they
getting
have to,
funding.
right, but they're asking for this commitment by the 19th. So that, so again, we're not even talking about budget. So it's, again, I think what I'm saying is an accurate
Yeah, and I would add, Brian, that we're making a financial commitment for a budget process that we haven't finalized with council. On money, we are not certain to have, where the money is being allocated from the Affordable Housing Fund, which is going to be a newly established fund for 2012. And I don't anticipate that the 12,000 commitment that we're making will be there. So having more time to plan this or to consider the request will give us, allow us to go through a formal process to consider such a commitment. Yeah. Matt is online, who's our finance director and could weigh in on.
I actually think we're clear on why it's challenging. So now the next question is, all right, if we make this commitment, where would it potentially come from? One thing that I asked about prior to this meeting was the Green Space Fund, because we have approximately 210,000 in there. We have 200 that we have committed. And so this project certainly fits into that piece in my mind, all right, the environmental piece. I mean, it's similar to, we thought about that with climate change.
Could I just have a question, background question? We have established a housing fund.
We did through
Line item.
legislation.
Okay. There is money or there is not any money?
There's no money in it now. There's no money in it now because we haven't collected the affordable housing mitigation fee from non-operator TGLs.
And you only have 8 of them.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that we've only got 3 non-owner occupied TGLs total with a registration fee of $1,500. That would only generate $4,500 at the most by next year. That's the max.
Okay.
So in order to fund it, because there's no sense in funding something that only has a couple $1,000 in it, we have to make a decision on how to fund that line item, which we have not done. Other than.
We haven't collected the fees.
Yeah, and under the audit rules, you can't supplement it out of general fund. That's why it didn't go forward.
Well, we can use the lodging tax. We could use lodging tax money to fund it. But we have not done that yet.
Mm-hmm.
We've not said how we're going to fund it, other than the non-owner occupied TGL.
Correct. You're correct on all those things. The lodging tax was, the council had made the decision that all lodging tax money will go to the general fund, which allowed the most flexibility on the use of the funds.
We could change that decision, though.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Other questions or comments?
I wouldn't take it from the Green Space Fund. There may, first of all, I don't think I'm not sure. It's not appropriate. I'd be in favor of looking at logic tax. And actually, I'm against having this line item, but I'm for a project by project request. And I think this is a great project. It's a lot of leverage for a lot of value, bringing similar to the demolition of the power plant in the Glen. There's going to be a lot of money brought in for this little bit that's going to help a lot of people. So I'd be in favor of it regardless of the line item.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, I too would be in favor. I think there's enough smart people around here to figure out how to do it. So I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion, but I think it's a good thing to do, and leveraging, Homemaking, any other organization like this has got a good track record of a lot of fruit being yielded from the little bit of investment that we've made in the past. So again, I'm in support, but as long as y'all can figure out a way to make it happen.
Okay.
If I could add a suggestion, I think that we really should work on a formal process for taking in community requests. I think that they need to be.
We do have a formal process.
I think they need to be evaluated properly against all community priorities. And when they're done mid-year, it doesn't allow us to evaluate them in collaboration with the total budget process. So these mid-year additions to the budget can be really problemsome.
Mm-hmm.
So what Matt says is along the lines of a comment I want to make. First, I want to say I'm in favor of this budget item. But when I saw, I'm just reading through the packet, right? I'm like, oh, incentive application. My brain immediately goes commissions, right? You see these applications, it's not that much money. I'm like, oh, this is in alignment with a lot of different priorities. It really is. And I mean, even if HRC was running, this could be the kind of thing that the proposal could have come to a commission, and then the commission could make a recommendation. But I understand there's a sense of urgency. But I do think that given the overall ask that Home Inc. is leading on the pledge, that if we're being asked for $12,000, and given the village impact for something that we heard over and over again with, for example, Economic Sustainability Commission, I think maybe even the YSDC could have been asked for a small amount of money. And we don't have a lot of money, but it fits, right? It fits with what we're trying to do. And we've talked for a while, even when we put in place the utility roundup program. Mm-hmm. From the very beginning, we saw the utility roundup program as a Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. And that there would be a second phase of utility roundup that was focusing on helping people with weatherization repairs and modifications and that sort of thing. And, and then COVID, right? But right from the very beginning, this was a phase 2 of the utility roundup. So I feel like it's spot in something that we've talked about before. It's not outside of process or budget in that way. We're not trying to stretch any boundaries of appropriateness. This isn't a strike zone. We just need to figure out where the money is sitting in terms of commission budget and roundup budget to make this work in the next budget.
I thank you, Lisa. I'm a man of a certain age, and I forgot to bring that point up because as I was reading this, I thought about phase 2 of the utility roundup. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think this just highlights another one of those mismatches, Marianne, that we were talking about earlier, where the budget gets finalized before we've really gone through all of our goals. So we're all in agreement about doing these things, but oops, we finished the budget process first. I don't have a solution for that, but I just want us to recognize the problem. The budget is not the bad guy. Circumstances are the bad guy because we stopped budgeting things and then we finalized all of our goals. And just from a timing perspective, and it didn't happen all the time, and it seems like it's popping its head up now this year and others.
Although most of those goals have been multi-year goals. So, indeed. In some ways, if we look at what we've got and we think more creatively about these opportunities, we just don't always, contemplate them.
Yeah. Right. And I would add one thing to it. There is a relatively easy solution to the challenge, but we just need to communicate it a little better because we provided this solution a while back. As Lisa mentioned, what was Roundup 2.0? What do we use the rec sales for? We said we're going to fund energy saving initiatives, rebates and incentives, and we're going to fund energy audits, weatherization for homeowners. We've been talking about this since last year when we've sold the rec. So it's not something new. We're just talking about, hey, let's have the conversation so we're not caught by surprise.
I will bring you additional evidence of how long this has been on the table. Note the footer of this document. ESC _ incentive application _ draft _ Wintro _ 22618. Mm-hmm. So we've been talking about this for a while.
Well before that.
So how do we solve the breakdown?
So I think the main thing is that, not the main thing, but we did add 15 minutes to our agenda with an unanticipated item, which was important. I think we've heard enough that we can figure it out. So I'm just going to make a motion that we approve this request and I have permission to write the letter. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And Judy, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Now you want to say something?
I think it's all said in the letter.
I know that I'm only sizable of homing. I just wanted to say thank you for your prompt attention to this.
The grant application opened in June, and it is something that Tony and staff are scrambling around to get done too, because we see the incredible need. The Carolyn Peterson grants that we offered this year went like that. So we definitely appreciate your attention to this. And if there is an opportunity to communicate collaboratively about budget expectations for coming years, we'd be very happy to participate in any sort of budgeting process or making a request or a recommendation moving forward. So thank you again.
Thanks, Emily.
I have a question. So you said this came out, the grant application came out in June?
Yes.
Is that a sort of normal thing, a short turnaround time, or is that something that happens not uncommon?
This particular grant is a short turnaround time, yes. And so we knew that it was coming down the pike. We talked about it at the last few projects committee meetings, but we did not know what the competitive scoring would be. We didn't know some of these details. And so we were trying to package it this first year application without any village commitment. But when we learned that the last two funding rounds, the cutoff for points was 70, and we could get 5 points with a 5% commitment from the village, bringing us to 75. We felt like it was worth the effort to come here, knowing that it was prompt, and we again really appreciate and acknowledge your swift response, so that we could try to really be competitive to leverage up to $200,000 to invest in our housing stock in Yellow Springs. So thank you for being flexible and responsive, and we'll do whatever we can to communicate well moving forward, and are happy to support your planning efforts however we can.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, thought you were going to get more time for manager's report, but I think it's highlights and
all right.
I want to keep us on time.
Yes, I would take questions on the report. I would like to address a couple things right up front. We talked about the sidewalk issues and what we're doing to address that. The motorcycle noise, I don't know if we have time, but Brian Carlson's online, and we were anticipating discussing that topic today. So I don't know if we have time to do so, but we're prepared to discuss that. Everything else is in the manager's report. I'm happy to take questions on it. I will put on my task list to follow up with trash on Dayton Street. And we're working on the motorcycle noise issue. And we're also working on the Fairfield Pike issue, on the request for the stop sign. We are, just as we've done with Spillane, monitoring the traffic, the count, the speeds and all that. We're doing that on Fairfield Pike now before we move towards putting in a stop sign. Other issues that we addressed that didn't make it to the manager's report. I know many of you had received someone to contact you about light in along Limestone. We are piloting a new type of light that allows us to adjust the intensity of the light. These are more expensive than the current lights that we have, but they provide a little more flexibility in terms of adjusting the intensity. So I spoke with Judah Hempflin today, and she was happy with the new light fixture. So I hope that this resolves that matter moving forward, and you won't be hearing more on those issues. But just letting you know, we're piloting that. There are other light options. They're just more expensive. So we'll try this low-hanging fruit, or least expensive option.
One other thing is, can we have some kind of explanation about Harvey Page's concerns, and just, I guess what I'm looking for is maybe a one-pager that explains, just what the whole solar policy is about and that sort of thing.
Yes, and thank you, Brian, for bringing that up, because I think the council and past village managers' involvement on this have muddled the issue a lot. Harvey Page was an early adopter of solar technology in the village. I think he was the first one, and he had some special arrangement with, I believe Laura Curlis, in Marcundus, had a special arrangement on how he would get paid for his electricity and how the billing will work. That is something that we can't honor now, and a council member, this just happened this week, that Laura Curlis reached out to my team to try to resolve this issue, which I hope, Laura, that you would come to me for this increase and not the team.
Yeah, I was asking questions, not trying to resolve it, and I wasn't involved in Harvey Page's project. Thank you.
Okay, but I think the team was taking what felt was a directive, and it was inappropriate. So I'm happy to follow up with these increase. But I will write something up. What Harvey Page is asking for, I think part of it is understanding how the bill works and how we pay residents for their solar. We've had this issue actually with Laura Curlis's account where our meter reader had inversed the numbers, and we audited and we corrected it and we provided the credit. So if someone brings an issue, we're happy to do the audit and evaluate it and making adjustments as necessary. With Harvey Page, that isn't the case, but we'll write up a formal response to that issue.
And I think the two things that concerned me were, one, the comment that we're discouraging solar, because I don't believe that's accurate, and I think we've done the opposite.
Right.
And secondly, I think it would be good to remind the community that we had a discussion around equity when we talked about this as well. And, part of this is a balance between, I guess the haves and have-nots in the sense of not causing us to have to charge more for electric.
Correct.
So anyway, it'd be good to reflect that and just kind of a reminder to folks. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, since we are wrapping up, and I think what you said, Josue, about the motorcycle noises, it didn't make the manager's report. So would that suffice, whatever the demand for information is, just that you write up whatever chief's?
I guess being sensitive to time, maybe it should be an agenda item.
I think we should hear a few things. Because I think this is important. So maybe since we do have Chief and he's been waiting patiently, I guess I'd just like to hear any initial thoughts based on the suggestions and questions. Mm-hmm. And then I agree, we'll move it to more at the next meeting. Mm-hmm. So let's just keep it to 5 minutes, a few minutes.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Forgive my ultra casualness here. So I did do, based on Josue's recommendation to me, some research with the local departments, and it's a difficult path to navigate, and I don't want to sound like I'm passing the buck or anything like that, but I'm just going to shoot straight to the point. Investigation of muffler noise on motorcycles, it's a practical difficulty, impossibility. Selective enforcement, prosecution of the same offenses becomes an issue. We've been working on our anti-racism actions and trying to minimize pretextual stops and all these things. And so there is some confusion regarding the practice of that, but there is a reason that it hasn't happened ever. And a couple of those are public safety. So motorcycles typically ride in groups, 3 or more. I wonder how one would envision the police engaging in those stops. So 98% of motorcycles that we've seen in Yellow Springs in my career here in 11 years, these are clubs, not gangs. They're coming in to eat, have fun, and leave. And one of the difficulties that we find, even with motorcycles that are within the federal mandates of muffler usage, is that in groups, well, that changes. So you have 3, you have 5, now you have 10 at the light coming into town or exiting the town at the hotel. They pick up speed, that noise amplifies, and it is an issue along a U.S. highway in a destination location like Yellow Springs. But I would love the opportunity for, which I have done with a couple residents, to have a face-to-face and talk about some creative ideas. I think the one thing that the police department can do to assist in the real moment is public engagement. When officers are downtown and they see groups, engage with them, talk with them, and see if we can spread the word that way. The one thing that I can tell you guys is that if this becomes something that the police become involved when, there will be more engagement. obviously, and I believe more people will come. And so I'd like to kind of just leave you with those thoughts for now, and certainly open-minded to any other ways that we might be able to assist. And I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
Yeah, so I'll add to that, the municipalities overall, this is one of the major struggles of enforcement. The law is clear about what muffler noise needs to be, under 82 decibels. So there's no doubt about what the legal boundaries are in this. There is an enforcement challenge, and it's an enforcement challenge we're willing to explore, but we'll also need council to change its position on noise enforcement, because it previously took position against stops for noises. So that's something that we need to have discussion on about selective noise enforcement. So let's take a position on noise. What is going to be your noise enforcement? Are we stopping vehicles for noise or not? And then we can look at what are going to be the challenges in terms of being able to have the evidence to issue a citation.
Okay. So I'm going to recommend, and I guess, council, if there's a majority that doesn't think we should be looking into this further, certainly, speak up. But there are two things that I haven't heard sort of negated yet. One is the idea of speed bumps downtown. And we've talked about raised walkways are in our active transportation plan. Everyone crosses wherever they want anyway. So I think we should fully explore that with the idea that maybe that will reroute some folks. And then secondly, the technology solutions. I've got a bunch of links to things that municipalities are using, and I'd just like to see what the legalities are. So Brian, you probably have a role in this, but there is a way to be hands-off on enforcement beyond just issuing a ticket. And then maybe they can talk to Mayor Pam. Yeah.
I think that having taken some time, letting the public know that we're going to take some time, coming up with as many ideas as possible, going through, including even having a little signage, maybe.
We do have a
motorcycle.
We do have a sign. We'll pull that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And at one point, Peaches agreed to hang it up, and other places where, motorcycle folks park. And it was basically like when in town, throttle down. The then Public Art Commission created that. There was a lot of support for it. And then the signs just sat in the office.
When was that?
It was when Melissa was here. So, anyway. Okay, good. I think that's enough. Anything else before we talk about future agenda items?
I just want to say, I noticed there's some key dates for the budget process in the manager report. So are those dates that we should be saving on our calendars?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. You are, the council has asked for an improved budgeting process.
It helps to have the early notice. Thank you for that.
And I'll get those in the agenda. So that
Great. Okay, so future agenda items, anything?
I want to bring a resolution allowing elected officials to buy into the village health insurance at the next meeting.
Yep.
I'd also be interested in, and maybe nobody else, if nobody else is interested in, I would like council to be the one authorizing changes in the traffic control map. Okay,
Can you
hearing silence?
Well,
what is it, for example?
Well,
like
instead of explaining it, could you write something and put in the next packet?
For the next agenda, because I just don't understand enough what the issues are. So if we can have it on the agenda so that we can all understand what you're talking about, that would make us not be like bringing crickets.
Yeah, I mean, that was my response. It was like, change as opposed to whom.
It's real, staff.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's real simple. If you want a stop sign, it's a resolution
Well,
change.
it's simple if you understand.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
Right.
It's
Thank
real
you.
simple.
Thank you. Agenda, I agree. Right.
And
well, I'm not going to guarantee it'll be on the next agenda, but something in the packet to get it started would be good.
And Lisa wasn't here last time, but I'm interested in a hiring freeze until we get through the budget process.
Okay. And then I have committed that I do want the Community Citizen Review Board to be on the next agenda for sure.
Which may not be a huge update on that, depending on where. So Josue and I've had a conversation, and we're taking it tomorrow. We're having a meeting with Ellis Jacobs. We're seeking external legal review. So we're going to try to expedite that, right? But we'll have an update no matter what. But there's no point in advancing an in-depth discussion until we know what's what with the external legal review. So we're going to try to move that as
Yeah,
fast as
I just want to make sure that it's clear that we are moving.
Oh yeah, we're moving, but
I didn't mention it because I assumed it was going to be on the
yeah,
next
no, it's
agenda.
moving. But we may not be ready to make any final decisions until we get that. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Anything else?
Yes. We had a meeting today with the climate action team, search team. And one thing that came out of that meeting, which actually Josue noted and has been mentioned at this meeting, is that we set our budget and then we set our goals. Mm-hmm. Whereas really we should set our goals and then set the budget in line with the goals. So what I would like to suggest is that in the next month, or ideally next month, that we do a goal review, but that in doing it, we also are looking toward 2022 rather than just reviewing where we are. We're really, so that then when we do a goal review, so that then when we get to the budget, that we have at least general ideas of some goals that would be impacting the budget.
I'm not sure what to do with the hiring freeze comment. Are we adding it to the agenda? What?
I mean, I think it's a potential item. I don't know. I mean, we don't have time to discuss it right now. So, okay. Anything else?
What I have, Brian, is the broadband legislation.
Okay.
From the committee's work, we're looking at a 3-month timeline between RFPs and building out the additional fiber. So we've got that time to work on legislation. Okay. So it doesn't have to be for the 19th, but over the next 2 months, we should try to get it on there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to remind everyone, we are going to have the second read on annexation, and we have to factor in that that's going to be a significant amount of time. So that's going to be the 19th.
The next meeting, I'm going to be returning, attending remotely because I'll be traveling again.
Okay.
Thanks for passing that.
That's okay. Okay. And finally, I'm sorry, I missed announcing that I will have some time away. I need some vacation time, so I would like to take Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday off of the coming week. All the work commitments are covered. Yes, all the work commitments are covered. So anything that we've already scheduled, we committed to do, and will still be done.
Agenda planning.
Agenda planning, I will be there as well.
Okay.
That is a Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yes, or it can be. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, thanks, everyone.
No, it shouldn't be.